There is some bright hope for a new coronavirus treatment, but experts agree this pandemic is on the loose. The cat is out of the bag. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Martenson. I'm here with a coronavirus update. It's February 5th, 2020. And this one's titled Shoot the Messenger. We'll get to that in just a second, but first, the numbers. From yesterday, I had put this up on yesterday's video update, and I said that this model was predicting that these would be the numbers that would come out end of day yesterday on February 4th. And indeed, when those numbers came out, here's what we saw. Instead of the 23,803 predicted, it was 23,865, 99%. That's what that would sort of imply. You might get alignment and fealty with that number. And instead of 499 deaths, it was 479 reported again. That's what we were expecting, and here's what we expect to see for today at the end of the day. 27,571 and 576, so we'll keep track of those. Listen, these numbers are really just not believable, not just because they're tracking a silly sort of a model here. Not a silly model, great model, but still, they're tracking a formula. Not just that, it's because we're seeing the official responses that we're seeing out of China and the 10,000 bed, thousands and thousands of bed hospitals that are being created, the response of the United States and the UK and other countries and the border closings, all of that stuff are really much more draconian measures than you would expect to see if this was really just the trajectory that we're following. As well, all the anecdotal reports out of China just say these numbers are too low. Now, that has a really big impact on everything. So, what's important here? We said that this really isn't like the flu for a number of important reasons. Yes, it's got a serious complication rate. That is still a very big concern, of course. And it's got this very high R0, so it's very transmissive. But it was the case fatality rate, and there's a lot of debate around that. So let's just take a look at that really quick, because we don't know what we don't know. So these numbers don't give us any sense that we really know what's going on. So let's break it down. If the infection rate is actually higher than detected or reported, hey, that's very likely, right? Then the death rate, or the CFR, the case fatality rate, will be vastly lower than is currently reported. So just to make an example, if they reported 100 deaths in 1,000 cases, that's a 10% CFR. But what if there were actually 10,000 cases out there, right? Well, then your 10% CFR drops all the way back to a 1% CFR. So I believe that the infection rate is vastly higher than being reported right now. I don't think they even have the ability to detect it, as I'm highlighting right here. I don't think they have any incentive to report it properly. They're using a model, it appears, to report this all right now. So we don't know what we don't know. It's entirely possible that the CFR will be vastly lower than currently reported. And we'll have to wait till all is said and done before we really know that. And while it's in flight like this, best we can do is make guesses. On the other side of that, though, but what if deaths are actually higher than reported? And we think this is also very likely. And a lot of reports in the mainstream media about that. Well, if that's true, then this case fatality rate has to go higher on that report, if deaths are higher. But we don't know by how much. So we really don't know what we don't know. We're just going to have to keep on top of this. I'm just trying to insert a big caveat here that everybody needs to take the numbers we've got, study them as much as you like, but always remember, they're going to change, and we have to hold that open. And they could change either direction. So we'll just watch it as best we can. I don't want to make this all about me, but I'm going to make this all about me at the moment. So I woke up this morning to discover that my Wikipedia page, which has been up for, probably 12 years now, had been deleted by a wiki editor. So some very self-activating person. They decided that I am a non-notable individual. Handful of citations from the 90s, no scientific contributions whatsoever, make him fail this NPROF. So I'm now a conspiracy theorist, apparently. They could find whatever this is about him. Significant cover, I don't even know what that is. Sources listed are unreliable or straight up written by him. No article covers him exclusively nor substantiates his notability. I found no reviews of his book beyond known conspiracy sites. So that's the end of that, right? And at least one person weighed in before they shut down all comments on this. But just because he recently made some videos about this outbreak, he is now suddenly apparently a conspiracy theorist, which is unsourced. Oh, another foul on Wiki. By the way, my PhD is sourced, of course. By the way, for the records, pathologists study diseases and their causes, so you may consider him an expert on the subject. At any rate, just to set the record straight, nothing notable. I have an article in Nature. This is the preeminent, this is the crown jewel. To get a scientific article published in Nature, there I am. Yep, that was I'm lead author on this one. This was really good work. That was fun to do. Yes, it's true. That was back in 1993, but that is my background. As well, I made it China. I've officially made it to China. So Wiki and the CCP now have something in common. They're both saying kind of the same thing about me. This is a fun one here. YouTubers capitalizing on public fear of coronavirus condemned. Geez, I'm not traveling to China. That's out. And here's how they characterize this. Some little known video creators trying to attract more followers and make a profit. That's how you always shoot somebody down. That's it, people. I'm doing all of this, waking up so that I can make a little bit of a profit on it. That's my motivation. Of course, that's what they say. Not even close. I really care about you getting the right information so you can make the decisions you need to make. That's my mission in life. It's what I do. This is funny. Many of them have been causing alarm by spreading unsubstantiated claims, scams, and sometimes outright disinformation. So they quote me from my first video that came out, and I just do here. This is, I think, the part that got the media got them in a twist. It's that I tell you that if you've been reading the news, you've been either underinformed or misinformed, and that's true. That still remains true. To the extent that the media is trying to tell you this is nothing but the flu, you are being misinformed. To the extent they're not telling you about the data you need, including the case fatality rate, the R0, and all those other things, you're being underinformed. But here's the coup de grace. Here's where they just lay me low. In just 1 week, Martinson's YouTube account added 12,000 more paid subscribers. God, I hate to break it to them, but there's no such thing as a paid subscriber on YouTube. Or if there is, I'm being cheated. At any rate, you have to read really far down in the article, and it says, and that much of this is sourced from the original Bloomberg article that came out a few days ago. Martinson calls himself a scientist. A statement refuted by Dr. Angela Hewitt. I hate to be refuted by Dr. Hewitt. That's terrible. She says he's not a practicing physician. He's just a guy with a science background who's taken an interest in this virus. Oh, how bad could this get? Let's keep going. Hewitt said and clarified that she, didn't see anything in my videos that gave her cause for concern. Well, that was coming out of the Mother Jones report. Well, let's correct that right away. How did the Chinese state media recover from that? Well, fortunately, the videos Martinson has posted were just unprofessional rather than harmful information. Hey, come on. I'm up in my game. I got a nice background from a PowerPoint template. We're rocking. All right. Here's the thing. We're getting a lot of this flack now, which means we're probably over enemy territory at this point in time. We're doing something that's kind of caught the system in a place it doesn't want to get caught in. And here's how I'm looking at this. Right now, I'm getting a lot of this pushback, such as it is on Twitter and other places, and people who are basically coming with this idea that these presentations of mine are potentially alarming. Well, I'm just giving you facts. Here's some facts I've just presented. We've gone through some data here and stuff. So here's my statement on this. Ready? If you are alarmed by facts, the problem isn't with the facts. Full stop. So if you're a person who finds yourself alarmed by the facts, that's fine. Talk to somebody else about it. I'm not interested because I don't have time for that. Let's go to some more facts. This is really interesting. There's a cruise ship I'm sure you've heard about. There's at least 10 now quarantined on a Japanese cruise ship. Here's what I want to tell you. There was a really important line in here, which I remembered reading yesterday, last night, 14 hours ago. And what I tried to do was find this again. Here it is. At least Google had it cached. It says, of all the passengers and crew, 273 who had close contact with the infected passenger took the virus test, and at least 10 of those have come back infected. So that's a pretty high infection rate. 273 people who were contacted, 10 ended up with it. Here's how that article reads this morning when I woke up. It says, the outcome was based on the results available after 273 aboard the vessel were examined. So this says close contact. They've now removed that information with no edit. There's no edit warning anywhere in this article that says article was amended or edited at some point. So this was just a quiet change, and I'm not sure why exactly that would be considered information that needed to be amended, close contact, so we can speculate on that all we want, but I'm just pointing this out. By the way, so this is really actually a pretty interesting result here because it's back with a fairly high infectivity rate if this is true. And I know cruise ships are floating Petri dishes and all of that. So this is fueling unease among officials that the number could go higher because of that. 10 out of 31 that they have tested already were confirmed to have positive results. So this 273 could be contributing a lot more once new results come in. And development suggests more passengers and crew members on the cruise ship could be infected and may not know it. And at least, catch this, 4 asymptomatic cases have been reported now in Japan. So that's kind of new information for me. I'll have to track that down. And remaining passengers and crew will be confined to the ship for at least 2 more weeks. And that's if, and only if, new cases don't pop up. So if they're on there and a week passes and all of a sudden somebody comes down with this, I think the clock resets and you get to spend another 2 weeks on that. Interestingly, that of the 10 who have now been confirmed as having positive results, 3 are Japanese passengers, 2 are Australian, 3 from Hong Kong, 1 from the U.S., 1 Filipino crew member. So we don't know the nationalities of these people. Perhaps they're all of Asian descent, and that fits with the earlier data we were talking about, Asians being potentially slightly more at risk of contracting this disease, but we don't know. The age ranges from 50 to 80 certainly fits with the fact that they're likely to be seriously impacted by this potentially. This was also another interesting result, came out last night yesterday morning at about 11 o'clock. I just saw it today, though. This concerns the case of a South Korean woman who tests positive after a Thailand visit. So let's look at this real quick. This marks the first foreign tourist to become infected with a deadly illness following a trip to Thailand, officials said. The 42-year-old patient who wasn't identified traveled home on January 19th. Remember, that would be pretty early in this whole thing. January 19th, there aren't that many cases compared to today from Thailand, where there have been 19 confirmed cases of the virus. I believe they're up to 25 now, though. They're up a little higher now. At any rate, she sought treatment on January 25th, so that's about a 6-day incubation period for chills and other symptoms, but only tested positive on Tuesday, and that would have been, if that Tuesday is yesterday, that's February 4th. So the positive test said that she would have been symptomatic, but not testing positive until Tuesday. So we're seeing both false positives and false negatives. False negative is where you're tested for the disease, you don't have any results coming back positive, but you actually have the disease. So it's a false negative. Now, it's unclear where she became infected, so let's be cautious about that. It's always possible that, I don't know, she's got a close friend from Wuhan who she didn't want to disclose and met with them in Thailand. We don't know. But this is actually raising the possibility now that she contracted the virus in Thailand. So let's run some numbers. Let's imagine that they do have 25 people with the disease. And let's imagine they even had them way back there on January 19th. Well, there's 69 million people in Thailand, so 25 divided by 69 million equals 0.00000036 chance of happening. That's the odds. If you like it in percentages, that's 4/100,000ths of a percent. Very, very unlikely. So this is an odd case that certainly is very intriguing, and I can't wait to see how that gets chased down by the epidemiologists. Take a look at that. Oh, so remember Bloomberg, who wrote all that stuff about I'm just trying to profit all this stuff? That was a few days ago, and the China state news picked it up. Well, now look at Bloomberg. U.S. readies for coronavirus pandemic, some experts now see as likely. I guess I was just too early, too soon, right? Just a little in front of that by about a week, and that'll get you all this sort of heaps of scorn from the mainstream media who prefer that only officials should be the ones allowed to look at just some data and make some conclusions about it. All right. Just a couple of weeks ago, scientists held out hope the new coronavirus could largely be contained within China. Now they know its spread can be minimized at best, and governments are planning for the worst. Full stop. Now they know its spread can be minimized at best, and governments are planning for the worst. This is why I do what I do, because the way we minimize this is through good hygiene through ordinary practices. It begins, though, with you understanding what the problem is, what the predicament is, and that you start taking new steps. This would be basic hygiene in public. This would be wearing face masks, not touching your face. This would be being alert when you've touched a common surface and disinfecting your hands, compulsively before you do anything like eat or touch your face. This would mean keeping social distancing, if possible. A couple 3 meters away from each other. That's how you do this. But in order to do that, people would need to be informed first of what the risks are, not minimized, not told it's the flu or not as bad as SARS. They need to be given the data, and that's what I'm trying to do, is bring you the data. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I agree with that. I agreed with that over a week ago. There's not a doubt this is going to end up in most countries eventually. And so absolutely the case. It's also worth noting that there are all these plans and there's quarantines being developed at military bases right now for the Americans returning home, but we're seeing military base quarantine, tent hospital ideas pop up in lots and lots of countries. Now, what would you do if you were an official in charge of this information? Well, I think one thing you want to do is you want to try and keep people calm. So the stock market in the U.S. has been doing these extraordinary vaults up and then just sort of park there, and then a big overnight jam in a park. This is, I think, absolutely to be understood in the context of keep calm. And I understand that, and there's a whole large public health debate about why you would want to do it this way. I get that. But I'm not here trying to represent the large macro public health issues. I'm here to help individuals for themselves decide what they want to do and how they want to respond to this. So those are two competing aims, very different. There's things that really don't make sense. I have this giant list of both travel restrictions and airlines that have severely restricted their operations. And today, in the markets, as of a few minutes ago, the airlines, well, they're all sporting really hefty gains. And I'm having trouble with that because a lot of people are actually limiting their air travel right now. Maybe this makes sense if the price of jet fuel is plummeting, which is possible. So this is the anticipation that airlines will save more on their jet fuel than they will lose in passenger traffic. That's possible, but not possible for Cathay Pacific, who has now cut 30% of all of their routes. And so, but they're, again, about the same amount of gain for Cathay Pacific, which flies principally out of Hong Kong and has heavy exposure to, of course, Chinese traffic. So at any rate, this doesn't make sense, kind of weird. Let's switch gears and talk about how there is now some hope for a treatment. We have an experimental antiviral medication, really cool, help fight the new coronavirus. The story behind this is that it's an experimental drug by Gilead Biosciences. It's a protease inhibitor. So this is these were originally developed as anti-HIV drugs, but don't make too much of that. A lot of viruses use proteases as part of their replication cycle, and HIV is one, but so are a lot of others, and that includes the coronavirus. So Gilead originally developed this as a potential treatment for Ebola. I think they tried it there experimentally with some reasonable results, and so now they're trying it here. And that was the news that came out last night that said, hey, there's some hope for this. And that's cool. So remdesivir, if I'm pronouncing that right, there's a couple of others that were also tried in the same class of drugs that the Thai health officials and doctors had already proven to their satisfaction that was very, very helpful in getting people to recovery. So this is not entirely new news. It's just a different class of the drug, and it's another one that could fit in with a cocktail of protease inhibitors. So good news there. Really looking forward to that. Again, what doesn't make sense in this story? Well, look at all this green today and all these companies. And what's the one company here that's in the red besides Merck? Gilead. So they just hit the news as potentially having this really important compound, and it's the only one that's in the red. I don't get it anymore. I don't get it. Little speculation time. We got to talk about this real quick. There was a thing called Event 201. This was the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum. That's Davos, World Economic Forum. And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they hosted Event 201, a really high-level pandemic exercise on October 18, 2019 in New York. And it was a great exercise. I've watched a lot of the video from it. They've got concerned public health officials there. You've got pharmaceutical representatives, government representatives, and they're asking the question through a hypothetical exercise, which curiously, if not morbidly, almost identically maps into the pandemic we're having right now. It was a coronavirus with a highly infectious rate behind it and a higher mortality and lethality than the flu. So it's kind of what we got. And at any rate, they sat down and they went through the whole exercise, and it was a simulated exercise, and they had computer modeling, and people were reacting, and they were trying to gather data from it, and they realized at the conclusion of that there was nothing you could do really to stop the spread. All you really could do, their main conclusion is this: the exercise illustrated areas where public-private partnerships will be necessary during the response to a severe pandemic in order to diminish large-scale economic and societal consequences. I don't see anything in there that says in order to diminish loss of life or anything like that. You can just sort of read between the lines here, but there's a larger write-up around this where they just kind of toss their hands up and they say the best you can do is slow it down, maybe so you don't overwhelm your hospital systems. I agree with that, which I think that's why people need to have access to this information. So you and I and everybody listening to this and everybody else knows how to go about preventing the spread of this disease. It's going to come. That's the main conclusion. It's going to have huge impacts. What they want to do is try and minimize these large-scale economic and societal consequences, and I get that from a macro perspective. I understand that point of view. If I were in their shoes, I get that. But I'm not in their shoes. I'm in my shoes. And my job is to help those who can become alert to these things be aware of them, and for themselves decide what they want to do with this sort of data. I think everything I've just sort of stepped through here, we're getting the new human-to-human transmission, tells us that it's on the way. So conclusions, what do I got? Well, first, come on, we really, really, really can't trust the official numbers out of China, not even a tiny bit. So take everything with a grain of salt. Again, it could be higher, it could be lower. We just don't know. And that uncertainty is not helping anything. And what would be great is if we had officials going over there into China and actually helping develop better numbers, but I don't see that happening right now. And second, the gatekeepers here, which would be, Wikipedia and the media and all that, they're not attacking any of my data, really, or any of my conclusions. I haven't had a single phone call from a single journalist that wanted to discuss this in any way, shape, or form. There have been no scientists who come forward and said, we really need to tell you where you've got all this wrong. But they are shooting the messenger in this case, which, come on, it's just never a good look on anybody or any organization. So if the media wants to remain relevant through this, they're going to have to either up their game or just get out of the way. So up to them. Finally, there is some hope for treatment. I love that. There's no data yet on how effective it is. There's no data on how expensive it's going to be, which could be a huge concern for the poorer nations out there, or even how far away they might be from ramping production up to global scale. It's one thing to have an experimental drug, your lab chemists make a few milligrams of it and you try it. It's a different thing when you're trying to produce tens of thousands of kilos of something. So we don't have any data on that yet, but it's hopeful. And I'm sure that we could rally and figure out how to manufacture it. And so that's good. The question is how fast. And I believe that being prepared is the right response by all responsible individuals. And that's the angle I come from. And of course, others can disagree with that and believe that people shouldn't be prepared and that it would be irresponsible for individuals to become prepared. I don't hold that view. I'd love to debate someone on that if they would like to take it straight up. And I also believe that even if you're holding these macro views about how to go about containing this thing and limiting the economic damage, it just can't hurt those efforts of those who want to limit the economic damage to have people like us alert, aware, prepared, and in a position to help in a time of emergency rather than be a drain on critical resources. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.